Hey friend, so you've been saying you want a real relationship. Maybe you've even sworn off the apps, decided you're done with casual, and started dreaming of someone to come home to. Someone who gets you, sees you, and chooses you. But here's the real question. Are you actually ready for that kind of a relationship? Or are you still chasing the idea of connection without being fully open to the reality of it? Because the truth is, most of us at some point say that we're ready for love, when what we're really craving is comfort. In real relationships, they don't always feel comfortable at first. They feel exposing, vulnerable, and sometimes a little scary because they ask us to show up as we are, not as the polished version we think someone else wants. In other words, the version that's only sustainable for the first few dates before it cracks. Today, we're diving in with compassion and a mirror to unpack what ready really means. Stay with me. Throw out the rules, forget the cliches. This isn't about the perfect profile or the perfect date. It's about real connection. It's time to strip away the masks, shed the stories, and drop those old patterns that no longer serve you. Tired of dating advice that doesn't fit? So are we. Welcome to Stripped, Drop Your Patterns, where conscious dating isn't about following a script. It's about embracing your whole self and attracting the kind of love that sets your soul on fire. I'm Rachel J., the connection coach and your host. Let's get real. So let's start with this question of why readiness really matters. A lot of people say that they're looking for a relationship, but what they actually mean is that they're looking for comfort. They are tired of swiping, they're tired of situationships, and they're tired of feeling alone at night and not having anyone to share the real stuff with. But real relationships aren't just comfort, they're mirrors, and not everyone is ready to look. Now, when we talk about readiness, it's important to name that men and women are often conditioned to think about this question very differently. So let's start with the men. For many men, readiness is tied to external benchmarks. You were probably taught, either directly or indirectly, that you need to have your career in order, or make a certain amount of money, live in the right apartment, or buy a house, and present as generally having your shit together before a potential partner will even take you seriously. You might even equate being ready with becoming a provider, a protector, or maybe even a father. And let's be honest, pop culture hasn't helped either. Movies, shows, and jokes about how marriage is where sex goes to die have shaped a lot of men's hesitations for settling down. And even that phrase, settling down, implies that for men to enter a monogamous relationship, he's giving something up, that the stallion must be stable, the adventure ends, and the freedom he once had is now traded for routine and monotony. It paints commitment as a loss rather than a deepening, a downgrade instead of an upgrade into intimacy, purpose, and connection. So my dear male listener, if you're weighing the cost of giving up freedom, sex, or spontaneity, you're not alone. You were trained to think that way. For many women, on the other hand, readiness has been expected far earlier. So if you were raised to be a good girl, chances are that casual dating did not appeal to you in the same way that it might have for your male counterparts. You may have fantasized about your wedding before you even had your first real kiss. And even though many women today are staying single longer and building independent lives and enjoying casual sex with more agency than ever before, there's still old programming lingering in the background. Messages like, your value comes from being chosen. If you want too much, you're needy. If you ask for more, you're difficult. If you show your desire, you're a slut. So, even as women embrace more freedom, that internal voice shaped by early conditioning can still whisper doubts and judgments. The result? A confusing push-pull between empowerment and shame. So while many women feel emotionally ready for partnership earlier in life, they're often navigating a tension between wanting intimacy and not wanting to lose themselves in it. Here's the truth for both men and women. Readiness isn't about having it all figured out. It's about having the capacity to face yourself in connection with another human, to hold discomfort, reveal your heart, drop your defenses, listen to understand rather than to respond, and work through the parts that don't feel good right away. It's not just about wanting love, it's about being willing to grow through love. All right, so let's get into a little bit of bad news. Here are 5 signs that you might still be holding yourself back from the kind of relationship you say that you want. So these are signs that you may not be ready just yet. Number 1 is if you chase spark but avoid depth. You crave that magnetic, heady chemistry, but when someone wants to get close, you pull away or you pick them apart or suddenly get busy. Now, I am guilty of having done this. A specific example that comes to mind that I am going to share with you is when I was in my early 20s in Chico, California, working at a grocery store. Shout out to Albertsons on East Ave. If you're still there, there would be this Coca-Cola vendor that would come in, and I would flirt with him whenever he was there when I was on shift. He was tall, broad, he had a great smile and a fun personality, and he was just a kind human, a really good man. And I remember when he finally asked me out, I was so stoked. The date he planned for us was a day date, which I thought was so unique and refreshing and just would take the pressure out of any sort of expectation. So I was totally down for it. So we started with breakfast and then we were going to see a movie. In between breakfast and the movie, he took me to Toys R Us. Now, before you think this is the weird part, it's not. He just needed to get a gift for his niece's birthday. And I loved that. It was a green flag for me. Not because my ovaries were screaming by any means, but I just thought that it really spoke to his character, how in tune he was with his family, and that he loved kids. So we had a great time wandering around the aisles of Toys R Us as a couple of big kids. But then, this is where the date went south for me. He took me to his grandma's house. Grandma's. To check the movie times because she regularly got the newspaper. So side note, I realize I am totally dating myself because we had to source a newspaper to get the movie times. Yeah, okay. So I don't know if this is harder to fathom than the fact that he took me to meet his grandmother on our first date, but cringe. I cringed at the time because who even does that? But I cringe looking back because I dropped the kind, hot, funny Coke vendor for liking me so much that he wanted his grandmother to meet me right away. So we still went to the movie, but at that point I was already checked out from pursuing this incredible person. So this is my own personal example of having presented so much that I wanted a relationship, but I was not yet ready to drop my pattern, which was the narrative that I only attract unavailable men. Sign number 2 that you may not be ready for a relationship. If you confuse connection with validation. So this is if you're not looking for someone to know you, but you're looking for someone to want you. And once you feel desired, you're already halfway out the door. Again, guilty, but who isn't on this one? It's so common to want what we can't have, or at least what we think we can't have. It's about the pursuit, the chase, the challenge. And then when we get that thing that we say we want, we're prone to thinking, well, that was too easy, or what's wrong with them being someone that we perceived as out of our league. And there's a Groucho Marx quote that I may botch, but something to the effect of, I wouldn't want to join any club that would have me as a member. So it's this idea that if something is going to accept me, something being a club or a group or someone is going to accept me, then there's got to be something wrong with them. So no thanks, I'll pass, right? There's something in getting what feels unattainable that the challenge is what's exciting. And then once that thing is achieved, then we got to move on to the next thing. It's boring now. We don't want it anymore. It's like when we're little kids and we get that toy that we begged our parents for, and we finally get it and we play with it for 5 minutes and then we're done. We're over it. Sign number 3, you mistake rejection for unworthiness. So from a very early age, we learn that no is a rejection of some part of us. So if when we're little, we ask a parent to play with us, and that parent, who maybe just walked in the door from a long day at work and needs some time to decompress, understandably, if that parent tells us no, we don't have the understanding of why they're telling us no. We just know that it hurts. And maybe this pattern continues throughout childhood, and then it's reinforced big time in puberty. So once we reach puberty and we're starting to develop these sex hormones, if we show interest in our crush and they shut us down or laugh or worse, which now with social media, every embarrassing adolescent action is amplified, being told no in our formative years builds on the hurt from our loved ones telling us no, even if it was a not right now or later or whatever. The reason didn't matter. It was the sense of being told no, that we didn't get that thing that we wanted, that then in adolescence can cause that feeling to morph into a bigger feeling of rejection that continues to compound as we navigate early adulthood. So every no that you've ever heard still echoes in your body. So instead of taking it as information or an example of somebody setting healthy boundaries or modeling healthy boundaries, which is something that we will talk about on this podcast, you then take it as a personal attack and armor up even more. So something that we're going to talk about a lot upcoming on this podcast is going to be with boundaries, how to set boundaries, how to respect boundaries, how to reframe no so that it is not felt as a rejection. Sign number 4 that you might not be quite ready. If you have a list for your ideal partner, but not a mirror. So if you know exactly what you want, but you haven't done the work to become the kind of partner you'd want to date. We know that it is much easier to fixate and fantasize about the person that we think we want than it is to look at the parts of ourselves that warrant a deeper look and some polishing. Now, I say think, that we think we know what we think we want, because we may not even know. The checklist for our ideal partner may have characteristics that are universally desirable, or characteristics that your grandmother would want for you, or that your best friend looks for, or that popular culture presents as being this ideal that we should all be going for. But is that ideal actually aligned with what's important for you? So that's what we need to look at. And this is one of the areas I work with my clients on very early on so that they can begin to get clear about who it is they're actually wanting to attract, and then being able to attract that person who will be a much better match for what they're looking for. What I will invite you to do is do this in your own practice. Make a list of your ideal partner. And of course, you can add physical attributes. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes sitting down to do an exercise like this can feel really uneasy. And we might think like, oh, okay, I can bang this out in 5 minutes. And then we sit down to write, a list, and we get stuck and we get a mental block. So there's nothing wrong with starting with the characteristics and attributes that come to mind the easiest. And so a lot of times that is the physical attributes. So there's nothing wrong with that. I just want you to make sure that you do include your values, aspirations, couples goals, interests, places you want to travel to, ways that you want them to show up for you in relationship. Just get really granular and honest about what is actually important for you. All right, so now going back to holding up that mirror. Maybe it's the way that we communicate our needs or how we treat strangers. Maybe it's keeping a clean, inviting living space so that when we bring somebody home, they will feel comfortable there. Or maybe it's being active. We have to be willing to hold up that mirror and ask ourselves, what am I bringing to the table and what areas could I be better at? And the last sign we're going to cover today is if you think love will fix something. So if you're secretly hoping that being in a relationship will finally make you feel secure, lovable, or chosen, spoiler, it won't. That work has to start before love will show up, before love can show up. If you haven't done the work to drop your patterns, whatever they may be, or the work to heal your wounds and to love yourself fully, flaws and all, then you're going to have the same reaction to the Coke vendor who brings you home to grandma on the first date that I had. No amount of feeling chosen is going to keep you from sabotaging something potentially great. And I want to be super clear here. None of these signs are flaws. They're flags. They're gentle signs that there's still more room to grow, and that's actually a really beautiful thing. All right, so let's get to the good news. Readiness is not a destination, it's a direction. And it starts with how you relate to yourself. So here are some signs that you are getting close to being ready. First sign is if you're unlearning the performance. You're less interested in being impressive and more committed to being real. Thanks to our conditioning, I shouldn't say all. I've gone out with some matches who were absolutely unapologetically themselves. But most of us show up on dates presenting the version that we think is expected of us. I've had a lot of dates where men showed up seemingly with a PowerPoint presentation of facts about themselves, hardly engaging me in the conversation, while I, on the other hand, sat quietly waiting to be engaged rather than inserting myself to their monologue. See, even I, as an independent and progressive female, reverted to the conditioning that girls should be polite and wait until addressed and not take up too much space. Ugh. And men, we're not looking for you to prove your worthiness with stats and charming anecdotes. We want to see who you are. We want to know you, what makes you tick, what you like to do on the weekends, where you like to go, what was the first concert you went to. Those early dates should be about fun and enjoying each other's company enough to want to learn more, showing your behind the scenes version rather than the highlight reel. Unlearning the performance and conditioning is what Stripped is here to do, so make sure you stick around. So if you're noticing your patterns and you're starting to see the loops that you get stuck in and you're getting curious and not defensive, this is another really good sign that you're getting close to really being ready. Now listen, I was aware of my narrative that I only attract unavailable men long before I was ready to be curious about it. I was so attached to it because, strangely, it became my security blanket. And what could possibly feel safe about believing that? Well, it protected me from getting in too deep emotionally, because if the situationship was doomed from the start, somehow knowing that ahead of time felt better than taking the chance that it could end for some other reason. I guess I felt like if I knew the end was coming, then it would hurt less when it did. But surprise, surprise, it always hurt regardless. So once I was ready to examine my patterns and untangle the sources of my patterns, then I started to heal and ultimately attract my beloved. This is possible for you too, and when you're ready, I can help you do the same. Sign number 3, you might be ready for love. If you want to build love and not just find it, if you're no longer looking for someone to save you from loneliness and you're looking for someone to walk beside you, think of it this way. What value can I add to another person's life? And I'm not talking monetary value. I'm talking about characteristics that would allow for a balanced partnership. Maybe you don't like to cook, but you're always happy to clean the kitchen. Or maybe it means trying an activity that takes you out of your comfort zone because it's your partner's favorite hobby. The takeaway here is that you're not seeking a relationship for what it can do for you. You're equally wanting to fulfill the other person's needs and better their day. Number 4, you're learning to hold discomfort without panicking. You don't bolt when conflict comes up. You stay, you breathe, you communicate, even when it's hard. Healthy communication and conflict resolution are foundational to a relationship. Conflict is always going to come up, but how do you respond in moments when you feel triggered? When you can put your instinct for self-preservation aside, aka the ego, and listen to understand rather than to respond, you're showing the other person that they are safe to express themselves with you, and this strengthens the bond. So you may have experienced this before, because this is true not only in romantic relationships, but in any kind of a relationship. If a conflict comes up and you're able to have an open dialogue where both people feel like they're able to express themselves and be heard and have that received without any sort of defensiveness or back and forth or finger pointing, but have it actually be really received, and have the other person, we'll call the other person the offender, take accountability. It's not necessarily always about the intention being good, but being misperceived by the receiver. It's about being accountable for the impact of what happened. So oftentimes, if you have this kind of conflict come up and you can get through the other side of it by removing the ego and really having an open dialogue, heart to heart, and understanding the situation and the other person's experience and taking appropriate accountability, then that does create a stronger bond. And both people feel safer to continue to have open dialogues and bring things up that may be uncomfortable. Because let's face it, conflict in any relationship is inevitable, but how you handle it can determine whether the relationship is healthy or becoming toxic. And the last sign for today is if you like who you are, alone, by yourself. And not because you're perfect, but because you've started to feel at home in yourself. You know what's really attractive? Being around someone who knows who they are and genuinely likes themselves. We've all been at like a party or an event or something where somebody walks in the room and they just have this magnetic energy about them. And it's not even necessarily physical or sexual, but it's just you feel drawn in because of the way they carry themselves. And so this kind of confidence isn't necessarily this person just, thinking they're the shit and knowing everything and feeling like they're the hottest thing in the room. It's nothing like that. It's someone who probably takes pride in their achievements, but is also quick to laugh at themselves when they drop food on every shirt that they wear. The point is, there's no such person as perfect, but there's perfect for you and there's perfect for them. And sometimes it can be those, so-called flaws that can be the most endearing. So another exercise that I recommend to my clients is the Be Your Own Wingman exercise. And this is where you list out all of the things that you like or love about yourself. Again, this can be challenging to get started, just like with the ideal partner exercise. So it's okay to grab the low-hanging fruit and start with the qualities that come to mind the easiest. If it's your job, or, you look banging in gym clothes, or if it's the size of your savings account or how much you've traveled, start there. Just then keep going. Think about the characteristics your best friend would say about you to your crush. Maybe you have an ability to outrun them in a potato sack race, or maybe how you always hold the door open for strangers, or how loyal you are to your friends. Continue to build your list and just get granular. So another way that you can look at this is achievements that you had even as a kid, right? So maybe if as a kid you won the spelling bee, you don't want to put on the list, I won the spelling bee when I was 8 years old. That doesn't really say that much. Yes, it's an achievement, but let's dig deeper. So that could say about you that you're a wordsmith. You have a strong work ethic. You follow through with commitments, and you're comfortable speaking in front of crowds. So this is something where you're just going to continue to finesse it and go deeper, and this will be a living document. So just keep adding to it whenever something that you like about yourself comes to mind, and refer back to it anytime you need a pick-me-up or before a date. Really, it's a good time to get out your list and just briefly go over it and remind yourself what a great human you are. All right, so now I want to take a moment and just say a word for those who have dated someone who was a not ready partner. So if you're listening to this and the part about not being ready doesn't really resonate with you because you know in your bones that you're ready, and the part about being ready, you're like, yeah, I've flown past that, 6 months ago, I've done the work, like now what? So maybe you have dated someone who says that they want something real, but their actions don't match their words. This part's for you. I want you to hear me when I say this. They probably were not lying when they said that they wanted a relationship or wanted something real. They probably did want that connection in theory, but as you now know, wanting and being ready are two very different things, and no amount of patience, effort, or love on your part can make someone else ready. That is not your burden to carry, and it never was. I know how much it hurts. I have also been in relationships for longer than necessary because I saw just the good in the other person, and I genuinely cared about them without expectation of getting anything back. Hope, definitely. But I knew that I would never not care for this person, regardless of how things turned out. But there was that part of me that felt like if I was patient enough, if I reflected back to him enough how deserving he was and how much I saw in him, that he would be ready. And he wasn't. And that's not my work to do. And it's not your work to do either. Everybody has to do this work for themselves. So again, if you're listening and you're here and you're like, I've dated people who have said that they're looking for something real and they're ready for a relationship, and then they bounce, they probably were not lying. And that is not your burden to bear. They just have their own work to do. And that's okay. So I want to change gears a little bit as we're wrapping up. And whether you're single and exploring your readiness, or if you're in something right now that feels a little unclear, I just want to offer you a few questions to sit with before we leave. When I imagine someone truly seeing me, what part of me wants to hide? Am I committed to being chosen or being seen? Who do I need to become to sustain the kind of love that I say that I want? If you do the ideal partner exercise or the be your own wingman exercise, let me know how it went for you. Please drop me a comment. And if you think that you'd benefit from more in-depth customized support, connect with me and let's explore whether private coaching is right for you. My contact info is in the show notes below. So how do you know if you're ready for a relationship? You don't. Not fully, but you can feel it when the impulse to protect softens and the desire to connect expands. You can feel it when you stop auditioning and start arriving. You can feel it when you stop searching for a person to complete you and start becoming someone who's deeply ready to meet another human soul to soul. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. Willing to look inward, willing to stay present, willing to drop your patterns, willing to grow. If that's where you are, you're already closer than you think. Thanks for listening to Stripped, where I help you to drop your patterns. Like and subscribe so that you don't miss a minute. Comment below and let me know what comes up for you when you do the ideal partner exercise and or the be your own wingman exercise. And if this episode resonated with you, there's a good chance it'll resonate with a friend. So please share it with someone who could benefit. Or better yet, send it to the version of you from 6 months ago. Until next time, keep showing up with your heart open, even if it's a little shaky. Bye for now.